So let me ask you all a question. Who feeds Africa? And when I say who feeds Africa, I'm not referring to the food that we eat. I'm referring to the systems that we have inherited in the 54 countries of Africa. So I'll ask you all again, who feeds Africa? Any thoughts? So our political systems, our educational systems, our financial systems, these are all systems that have been inherited by our colonial masters. Because he who controls the feed controls the flow. And he who controls the flow shapes the future. So let's go back decades before independence movements turned into hashtags. Back when Pan-Africanism wasn't just an idea. It was a call to arms. It was a call for unity, it was a call for identity, and above all, it was a call for self-reliance. Kwame Nkrumah dreamed of an Africa that would industrialize its own raw materials, not just produce, but manufacture, build, and innovate. The 54 countries in the continent have every element of the periodic table. So let that sink in. Gold, bauxite, iron, every element of the periodic table exists in our 54 countries. So it is really up to us to be able to maintain our resources. So the question is, what happened from the Pan-Africanism time to now? The colonial powers have left behind so many remnants that we ourselves are now trying to catch up. So as I mentioned, during our Pan-Africanism time back in the 50s, we had W.E.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, Jomo Kenyatta, George Padmore, Patrice Lumumba, Haile Selassie. They all imagined a continent where Africans wouldn't just export resources, but own the systems that transformed them. But again, what happened? Nkrumah warned us the colonial powers are leaving behind states that look independent but are ruled by governments friendly to their interests. And that's exactly how the matrix was built. A system designed to look sovereign while remaining dependent. You see, the chains of colonialism didn't disappear. They've just evolved. They have evolved from aid, they've evolved from from being able to provide us with consistency. And so we need to tap into our own systems and break the matrix. So greetings to you all. My name is Mariama Jalloh. I am a daughter of the Lion Mountains, a small West African country that you all may have heard of, Sierra Leone. We are known for our beautiful beaches, our beautiful people, and our abundance of diamonds. I'm also a strategist. I'm an innovator. I'm a mom of 3 boys. But most of all, I am passionate about economic freedom and financial inclusion. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to talk about economic freedom, about what it truly means to build self-sufficiency to transform Africa's natural and intellectual resources into systems owned, funded, and led by Africans so that the next generation doesn't just dream within the matrix, but it redesigns it entirely. So now we've seen how the systems that shape Africa were designed to keep us dependent, to make us consumers of the raw materials that we produce. We borrowers in markets that we sustain, but true economic freedom, the kind that redefines destiny, doesn't come from aid or external investment. It comes from ownership. Ownership of our ideas, ownership of our infrastructures, and ownership of our capital. It comes from building founders, innovators, and visionaries that are all from our soil. The systems that bind and control Africa today were never designed for our liberation. They were designed to manage our output, to extract our value, not to create it. the matrix is a web of dependencies disguised as development, then our mission is very clear. We must decode it, disrupt it, and redesign it. Because every nation that has ever risen has done so by mastering one simple truth. Those who build the systems own the future. So the question is, what is the matrix? It's not fiction. Neo, I promise, will not pop up on the stage. As it relates to Africa, it's a complex web of systems that determine who gets to build, who gets to own, and who gets to decide. It operates through our financial systems, where our currencies are often pegged to foreign value, where capital flows out faster than it flows in, and where credit is abundant for consumption, but not for creation. It operates through our trade systems, where Africa remains an exporter of raw goods and importer of finished goods. We mine it here, refine it there, and then buy it back with interest. It operates through our intellectual systems, where the curriculum we teach, the data we trust, and even the benchmarks for progress are imported, not inspired by our lived realities in the continent. It's a structure so familiar that we hardly even notice it. But it governs everything from how we borrow, to how we build, to how we dream. And if we don't decode it, ladies and gentlemen, it will keep doing what it was designed to do: extract our value and sell it back to us at a premium. The truth is, the matrix doesn't have to use brute force anymore. All it does is uses its influence. And here's the key. Once you see the matrix, you cannot unsee it. Once you understand how the matrix works, you realize you don't need permission to reprogram it. So, how do you decode the matrix? It starts with transparency, demanding clarity on how money, contracts, and partnerships flow into and out of our countries. Follow the numbers, ladies and gentlemen, not the headlines. To decode the matrix, it requires policy that prioritize production over extraction, policies that give incentives for manufacturing, local value addition, and technology transfer, instead of giving tax breaks that only favor raw exports. To decode the matrix, it calls for capital design for creation, not for consumption. This will include investment vehicles, development banks, lending criteria that make it easier for African entrepreneurs to build factories, platforms, and infrastructure. To decode the matrix, it means data and knowledge generated by us. We need African research institutions, standards, and metrics that measure success by our impacts in our communities, and not just using GDP or some foreign rating. To decode the matrix, it demands procurement and government that favor African solutions. Government buying from African suppliers, contracts that are based in Africa, and capacity building rather than outsourcing. And above all, we need to build ecosystems of founders and investors with African business ideas in our industries. This isn't just a theory, it's our responsibility. Every government, every business, every citizen, we all have a role to play. So the question is, can we decode the matrix? Because people in Africa were already proving that it's possible. We're building, we're innovating, and we are breaking the code every day. Founders that founded Paystack, a global payment processor that didn't understand, global payment processors didn't understand local realities. They didn't understand the unpredictable banks, the fact that we all walked around with cash. Paystack changed all of that. They built a seamless, reliable platform for African businesses to receive payments instantly by making online payments possible for thousands of small businesses. Paystack helped unlock a new layer of economic participation. Another founder story, Ham Saronji from Uganda and Majid Mujali from Ghana. They saw a simple but a painful truth. It was easier to send money from Lagos to London than from Lagos to Accra. And that's how Chipper Cash was born. They built a free, instant, peer-to-peer payment platform that allows Africans to send and receive money across borders without paying the high fees of traditional banks or remittance companies. Today, millions use it to pay for schools, to invest, and support families across 7 African countries. This isn't just fintech, ladies and gentlemen. It's financial liberation, connecting African economies to each other instead of routing value through foreign systems. Another founder story, millions of small merchants across Africa operate without bank accounts. They are the backbone of our society. They don't have credit histories or digital tools. These merchants are invisible to the formal economy. Moniepoint, founded by Tosin and Alondri, decided to change that by building an agent network that reaches deep into market and rural communities. Moniepoint provides small businesses with the tools to receive payments, save securely, and access credit for the first time. They didn't wait for banks to reach these people. They brought banking to them. So today, Moniepoint processes billions in monthly transactions and serves as a financial backbone for the informal sector, the real economy that powers Africa every day. These founder stories, they're not exceptions. They are proof. Proof that when Africans design solutions for African realities, progress follows. Paystack built trust, Chipper Cash built connection, and Moniepoint built access. Together they show that innovation doesn't always start with abundance. Sometimes it begins with constraint. But when people have agency, when they are trusted to lead, to build, to solve, they turn scarcity into systems. And that's the essence of African ingenuity. We create, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. This is how the matrix begins to break, not through theory, but through action, ownership, and imagination. I spent my career in finance as a management consultant working for major corporations. So over the years, I've seen brilliant African founders build incredible solutions with a fraction of the resources that have been given to others. That experience shaped my belief that the problem isn't talent, it's access, or the lack thereof. There is a huge funding gap, ladies and gentlemen. So if we want economic freedom, we have to build it. We build it through people who create and the people who invest in creation. Africa does not lack ideas. It lacks the systems that help those ideas to grow. So where do we start? We start at home with that what already works. We all know about susus. Susus were born in the African continent, and it's a global saving mechanism. But utilizing savings group, cooperatives, community networks, they just need systems to be able to plug in and connect to real businesses to invest. We also need to strengthen mentorship and incubation, and not just with workspaces or free Wi-Fi or free coffee, but with guidance that turns ideas into companies. The amount of brain power that exists in the diaspora, if we all were to come home, it would make a huge difference with these companies. There are companies like Nile Lab who are actually investing the time and energy to work with mentorship, mentoring young startups. We also need to promote policies that reward ownership and reinvestment. Governments can make it easier for local investors to take equity from pension funds to back startups, and for founders to keep control as they grow. In Kenya, there is a very new policy that just was announced this week that will require large corporations to direct part of their corporate social responsibility budgets towards funding startups. And in my home country, Sierra Leone, Access Bank has just launched a $20 million innovation fund to support and expand small, medium enterprises, financing and focusing on women-led businesses. But we still need to tackle access to capital and regulation. And we can do this through creative financing, blending private and public funds, so as to de-risk early ventures. It provides more capital within the startup world. And having worked in the financial sector, I would tell you all, I've seen that capital follows confidence and trust. So when we show that our governments work, when entrepreneurs report transparently, deliver on time, and scale sustainably, money flows. And when money is ours, and it comes from our communities, our institutions, our investors, the returns don't leave the continent. They multiply here. Because that's what this is really about. Building founders who solve real problems and investors who believe that Africa is not a new frontier to conquer. And if I'm honest with you all, that doesn't sit well with me, and it shouldn't sit well with you all as well. I'm not an isolationist, I'm a strategist. Strategic partners are always needed, but they should come to a table that we built and take their seat as guests, not gatekeepers. So here's my call to action. Decode, disrupt, and redesign. So let me leave you with this. We've all heard our parents say it. They pray for a better Sierra Leone. They pray for a better Nigeria. They pray for a better Liberia. They pray for you fill in the blank. And too often, we watch that hope fade into a distant wish. If not in our lifetime, then maybe in our children's lifetime, maybe in the next generation. But here's the truth. We have that opportunity now, not in some distant future. It is in our hands today. So my call to you is simple. Let's decode the systems that have held us back, disrupt the structures that no longer serve us, and redesign the matrix on our own terms. Support local founders, become investors in our own communities, champion policies that foster true economic freedom. Together, with our collective ingenuity and intentional investment, we can build a future defined by our own aspirations. The hope our parents held on to doesn't have to skip another generation. It starts with us right here, right now. Thank you all.